This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and I'm very pleased to have in the studio with me Jacob Smith, the co-producer and filmmaker of Waking the Sleeping Giant, the making of a political revolution. And he's also a climate activist and former Bernie staffer and former mayor of Golden, Colorado. I've been in Golden, Colorado. It's a beautiful town. WakingTheSleepingGiant.com is the website. You can tweet Jacob at Jacob Z. Smith and or at Waking Giant Film. And special announcement here in Washington, D.C. tonight at 7 p.m. at the E Street Cinema, which is on 11th Street. Well, actually, it's on E Street between 11th and 12th, or 10th and 11th. It's right in that neighborhood, yeah. Great theater, actually. In fact, you can get a glass of wine and take it.
Yes, you can.
Have dinner with you.
And food.
Yeah, there you go. And we also have a plug over at ThomHartmann.com for it as well that you can click through. And on the phone with us is Kai Newkirk. Kai Newkirk is in the movie. Kai, welcome.
Great to be with you.
Great to have you. And Jacob, thanks for being in the studio with us.
Thanks for having us.
So, and Kai Newkirk is with 99 Rise and just all. I'm sorry, Kai, I don't have the rundown on your CV here. Do you want to quickly let our listeners know who you are and why you're in the film?
Sure. I'm a co-founder and serve as the mission director of Democracy Spring, and we are one of the movements that they follow in the film. A march from the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia to the Capitol in Washington, D.C. that was followed by one of the largest acts of civil disobedience in our country of the 21st century, over 1,300 arrests at the U.S. Capitol demanding that Congress act to save our democracy. And then they also follow nonviolent direct action that we organized at the DNC in Philadelphia last July, challenging the Democratic Party with big money and commit to fight for the reforms that we need to win a democracy for all. So we were honored and excited to be part of the film. It's amazing to see how it's come out, and very grateful to be featured along with many other great organizers and leaders and people doing incredible work across the country.
Great. So Jacob, tell us about the film. What provoked you to make this movie, Waking the Sleeping Giant, the making of a political revolution?
Sure. Well, I was working for Bernie at the time in his Senate office, doing energy and climate policy for him. And this was before he had decided to run, but he was thinking about it. He started to travel around the country doing town hall meetings and small conversations, often in really red states. And he had sensed, I think, that something was happening. And it was clear doing that around the country, the kind of reaction he was getting. So we started to think, well, this might be really interesting if he runs to do a film about Bernie and his presidential run. But pretty quickly we realized Bernie's part of a bigger story. So a film is just about Bernie. That's going to be interesting to people who love Bernie. But the bigger story is about the movement, of which Bernie is a central part, but in which there are so many other people as well. So that was our early pivot. And from there, we found a number of folks, including Kai, to spend a lot of time with over the 2 years we filmed, and tried to tell a story that explained what was going on around the country over these last couple of years, to try and make sense of what happened in the election itself, and then to help chart a course forward from here.
So what is going on around the country? And I want to ask Kai that question too after you answer it, Jacob. And what did happen in the election?
Yeah, well, I think there are two things that we really focused on in the film. The first is probably the most obvious to folks that come out of the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren wing of the left, and that is that very deep anxiety, and we saw this with Trump as well on the right, this very deep anxiety about the economic conditions that the U.S. faces, the kind of opportunities people have, or the sense that those opportunities are diminishing, stagnated wages, all of that anxiety about the future opportunity for a healthy, fulfilling life for people and their families. And that's all over the country. It's deep. It was driving this anxiety and anger that we've seen very clearly now, especially during the election, during the campaign season itself. And so that's one thing that really surfaced. The other is within the left itself, this rift between what Van Jones calls, his shorthand for it is the white left and the black left. So that kind of the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren part of the left, which has a very class-focused economic lens. This is about fundamentally the ways in which the wealthy take advantage of everybody else. But there's another left, what Van loosely called, or shorthand called, the black left, but it's more like the entire racial, it's like all the other parts of the left, the racial justice left, the immigrant left, the gender and LGBTQ left, all these other pieces of the left that often feel like they're kind of marginalized by the white left. And so there's this rift about, for some people on the left, it reduces to this class issue, this class analysis. But for a lot of other people, actually, no, racism is its own thing. They interact, but it's a separate thing, and we can't build the kind of coalitions we need if we don't figure out how to bring all those pieces together.
I mean, that's the great advantage, or the horrible advantage, of white privilege, is that you can ignore race, and the privilege of middle class privilege is that you could ignore class, and both of those things, I think, are collapsing the ability to ignore either one of them. Kai Newkirk, same question for you. What are your thoughts on, what happened in the election and the state of the revolution, as it were, the resistance?
Well, I think Jacob is right to sort of zoom out to the broader context, and I would say that there are converging and intersecting crises that are deeply impacting our country and the world, from accelerating climate change to this historic level of economic inequality and the erosion of the middle class, to the disaster of mass incarceration and the drug war, and routine police violence against Black people and other people of color, and student debt and inaccessibility of higher education. And all of this, I think, for many people, more and more has come to lead to a total loss of legitimacy of establishment politics and economics. And we're not just seeing it here, but around the world, there's a real uprising from everyday people who see how things are not working for them anymore, or they're working even worse than they were before, and want and know that the establishment and the status quo is driving that, and at a corrupt politics, creating a rigged economy. And there's a hunger for change and a fight for change. And I think what happened in this election was that whereas Donald Trump was able to articulate to many people, primarily the white working and middle class base, that he was some kind of answer to that crisis of legitimacy, and with this right-wing populism, Bernie's answer from the left didn't prevail within the Democratic primary. And so Clinton was never able to represent that, I think, for enough people, although she ended up getting more votes and Trump won because of voter suppression. In our view, a candidate like Trump should have been defeated handily by a progressive populism that united concerns around economic justice and the corruption of our democracy with racial justice and all of the other fights that are so important. And that fight is obviously still playing out within the Democratic Party. And Van Jones speaks to it well when he says that people are trying to force us in to this false choice between really speaking to and to unite working people and taking on the billionaire class and understanding that that's the fight around economic justice in which working people are united, and also dealing with racial justice and the crisis of mass incarceration, police violence, et cetera, understanding that those have to be addressed as their own intersecting but still separate fight as well as others. And I think that, it's the millennial generation that's really leading an insurgency, I think, within the Democratic Party to say, we're not going to make that choice. We're not going to accept that false choice. We're going to build a progressive, populist movement for economic democracy that is going to hold fully all of the people who make up America, all of the needs, people of all races, genders, sexuality, et cetera. And I think, we're making progress in that, in my view.
Jacob, where do you see this going?
The film?
Yeah, no, the movement. I mean, the movement that you chronicle in the film. We're talking Kai Newkirk with Democracy Spring, Jacob Smith, co-producer and filmmaker with Waking the Sleeping Giant, which is premiering or playing at the East Street Cinema tonight at 7 p.m.
Exactly.
Right here in Washington, D.C. So
I think that it's clear that the energy is there to build a re-energized progressive movement for the 21st century. People are fired up. There are real challenges in people's lives. They are genuinely fearful that their kids will face worse quality of life than they enjoy today. That's very real. And then tons of Americans don't even experience the basic set of protections and security that we just kind of assume is deserved by all Americans. So that energy is deep, it's profound, it's fired up. And I think our challenge is to be able to build these cross movement relationships that say that we need everybody at the table and everybody at the table to take seriously the concerns that are at the table. Linda Sarsour has this great line in the film where she says the first thing you got to do is look around the table and see who's missing. So if we can get everybody to the table, and if we can do that in a way that's respectful to everybody there, and build a movement that's rooted in that diversity of movements, then I think there's real potential for the left to successfully offer the kind of vision that Americans are desperately hungry for. And like Hai references, the younger voters in particular, we saw that in the election, how desperately hungry they were for big ideas, for big vision. And on the Democratic side, I think Bernie came as close as he did to winning the primary because he truly offered that. Separate from whether those are the best ideas or the right ideas, I think many of them probably really were good ideas, but separate from that, he was willing to come out with really big, bold vision for where we take the country. So I think if we can weave together those relationships, then the left has a real opportunity to offer a real vision that answers the frustrations of so many Americans that are desperately looking for a path forward.
All right, we got 30 seconds of the break. You want to add to that?
Absolutely. It's going to be a fight, and I think one of the big questions is whether we're going to take over and transform the Democratic Party or try to create an alternative. In my view, we've got to take over the party and transform it. That's the path that Bernie is on. And if we have unity around that and we can create that table that brings together all the voices and needs that Jacob points to, I think we can win. It's a question of whether we can build that unity.
Very well said. Kai Newkirk with Democracy Spring, Jacob Smith, the co-producer and filmmaker, Waking the Sleeping Giant, The Making of a Political Revolution. The movie is playing tonight at the East Street Cinema here in Washington, D.C. at 7 p.m. WakingTheSleepingGiant.com is the website. Jacob, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for being with us. We'll be back.
As always.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be back with your calls, my thoughts, and the news of the day right after this.